right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. John Belkowitz,
David Harris,
Intelligent Concrete, here to talk to you about the awesome concrete. Specifically, David had a question.
Yeah, John, say I was in the field the other day, and a guy walks up to me and points down at this concrete and says, "Hey, is that ASR?" And I just wonder if you can tell ASR just by looking.
So that's
and I know you wrote the book on this, the
Sure.
ABCs of ASR.
ABCs of ASR,
so I
fantastic book.
Figured you're the man to ask about this.
So yes and no. The answer is an easy but difficult question to answer, because yes, we could spot ASR, just by looking at it, but it can be disguised. ASR can look like different things. It could be AAR, but let's take a step back and first of all define what ASR is.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the most important things, that if you know what a failure mechanism is at its most basic level, it helps you understand what it's going to do to the concrete, and therefore when you see something, you can make a judgment call, because not every situation is going to be cut and dry. Most situations are going to be in the middle, in the cloudy area, in the gray. So alkali silica reactivity is a form of alkali aggregate reactivity, where we have a reactive aggregate, specifically at the surface area. There's some form of reactive silica that combines with a certain chemical in our cement paste that surrounds the rock in our concrete matrix, or in our concrete composite. And it's these soluble alkalis in combination with the water and the silica that creates this environment for a very specific type of gel to thrive and survive. So what happens is these alkalis, as they're called, consume the reactive silica at the surface of the aggregate and create this very expansive gel that, with more water, creates more gel and starts expanding, and it becomes dehydrated and mature and immature closer to the aggregate, and all these stresses start getting created, and we start getting a residual tensile and steel and shear load at the interface between our aggregate and our hydrated cement matrix, that gray stuff, ultimately causing stresses that overcome the strength of the concrete, because as we all know, concrete's not great in shear and tension.
Right.
And it eventually starts cracking the concrete. Well, as we crack the concrete more, we start getting more water to come in. As we start getting more water in, more of the soluble alkalis migrate to the interfacial zone of the aggregate. We get more of that gel, and there's more expansion and more cracking. So, that's the basic mechanism.
Right.
Now, when you said you saw this thing in the field, what did you see exactly?
Well, there was this one crack that just kind of opened up. It kind of ran along, was kind of long and whatnot. And there was this other place in this different pour, and it looked like alligator skin. There was all this stuff all over the place. And I thought, well, I can't imagine ASR is just going to be one little crack that's just going to run along the length, whereas this other stuff that's all over the place, this mottled look at the surface, that seemed more like it might be ASR.
So the two different cracks that you're talking about, one just goes on for a longer period of time, or a longer stretch. I would say that more than likely is not.
Yeah, that's what I said.
ASR.
Mm-hmm.
That could be from drying shrinkage. It could be from settlement issues. I don't know is the answer, but I could guess, educated guess. And that's one thing, folks. Rarely will you ever find an engineer who's going to give you a positive statement, because there's always that we don't know scenario, because we're not in the field and really don't know.
Hard to see it from here.
Hard to see it from here. And everybody's interpretation of a concrete crack can be difficult or different. So David's interpretation of a hairline crack, let's say, is 1/32 of an inch.
Right.
My definition of a hairline crack might be 1/16 or 1/8 of an inch. So, anyway,
big hair.
Big hair. Big hair. So, come on. So anyway, the other cracks, those are the cracks that I think I'm a little bit more interested in. And where did you find these cracks? What part of town?
Oh, you know, it's just up north there.
Denver, Colorado area?
Yeah.
So that's part of it. That's identifying your materials. And, you know, Colorado, we're known for having some pretty reactive aggregate. You know, we have, 3 different areas to pick aggregate from, and then sometimes rock comes in from Wyoming or Utah. And we do have a lot of Class F fly ash to mitigate ASR. It's changed in the last few years. We've actually seen a reduction in volume, so that, you know, errs in the side of more than likely it is ASR, because we know that our materials so that are susceptible to ASR damage.
Right.
So that's another direction I go. Before I even go out to the site, I try to look up the materials and identify, are there materials. If you're in an area where, like Augusta, Georgia, and they got some of the hardest, nicest rock in the world, and it's non-reactive, or it's predictable, they don't have to use that much ash to kill the ASR expansion, that would give you a clue right away. But Colorado, we have known for ASR attack. Now, were the cracks, when you saw them, did they have a very specific pattern to them, or are they just totally random?
Well, you know, they were just kind of like alligator skin. They're just kind of all over the place, you know, splotchy looking, that type of stuff.
So normally, not all cases, ASR gel has a certain map cracking look to it. Now, what you described sounds like what I like to call map cracking, or this shattered look on the surface.
Exactly, shattered's a good term.
There's this wonderful book on the ABCs of ASR, but there's a couple of pictures in here of different structures that have been or have gone through ASR gel attack, and either were about to be torn out or the consideration is to get them torn out. But there's one picture in particular from an international airport that shows, it's on page, this was the draft, so it's on page 113, and it shows this map cracking that I think you're talking about.
Yeah, that looks a lot like it for sure. Like, it has that kind of, like I call it alligator skin. It just kind of, you know, has that pattern to it.
I like to call it map cracking because if you look at it, especially from far away, it kind of looks like a city map.
Yeah, I see that.
Now, the thing about map cracking is map cracking can actually happen for a bunch of different reasons. Whether you put too much water on the surface of your concrete, or there's a lot of evaporation that day, or the sun's out, there's a lot of solar radiation. I mean, plastic shrinkage can also cause map cracking. There's a lot of different things that might lead up to this. But you might get map cracking from ASR gel attack. There's also a photo from one of Mike Thomas's papers that he did for the Federal Highway Association on a bridge outside of Quebec City that they had to tear out. And right before they tore it out, they excavated the soil that was going up against the infrastructure, and you had this beautiful diagonal line where, you know, your concrete that was continuously wetted had all this map cracking from ASR, and then the concrete that was bone dry from being covered by soil had no attack.
Oh.
So this, in my opinion, would be, and plus we know, you know, from core testing that this was ASR gel.
Right.
Now, by the look of it, I would say there's a 50% chance it was, just from this vantage point, without knowing the materials, there's a chance that it would not be ASR gel cracking. Now, if you're starting to see a white paste coming out of it and, you know, some of the aggregates pushing out, then the likelihood of it being ASR attack is greater. Now, there's another picture on page 29 and 30. It takes over both pages, and it shows this very specific type of crack pattern that you get with ASR gel. And it's called the Isle of Man crack, and it looks like the flag from the Isle of Man, which is these 3 legs, and they're at 120-degree angles offset from each other. So it has that type of 3-legged crack pattern to it at 120-degree angle. And like I said, there's a wonderful picture that we'll post online in the book that really illustrates what this crack pattern looks like.
Well, that's pretty helpful. Thanks for that. So these linear cracks probably not ASR, but these more pattern-like, particularly if you see leaching or maybe even some pop outs with some
Yep.
whitish looking gel on them or something, that's almost for sure ASR in that case.
Yeah, we Whitney and I were actually driving up by. Sorry about that. We're driving up by Colorado Springs, off of Powers and Woodman, and there was this pilaster that not only had that crack pattern, but it was just oozing with this white paste. So, I mean, we know the area, we know the materials. 98% sure. You know, there's that 2% of the unknown that was ASR gel.
So, if you had to actually test rather than just look and give an opinion, what test would you do to be sure it was ASR?
There are a few tests that I would run. Depends on what your budget is.
Yeah.
You know, if money, that's always the case. That's always the case. Let's say we didn't have any budgetary restraints.
Okay.
Money was not an object. It's a major project, and it's more expensive to tear out the structure than worry about a few $100,000 of doing research. I would take samples of it, core samples of it, slice them and dice them and polish them and epoxy them and grind them and polish them and throw them under a scope and actually look at the interface. So this would be a petrographer who would look at the interface between the aggregate and the hydrated cement matrix to identify if there is ASR gel and how extensive the expansion is and the cracking is.
Now it look like butter on a roll.
Right.
There'd just be this layer.
Right.
Layer around the aggregate.
It'd be layer around the aggregate. It'd be right, and you could possibly see, depending on how good, the person is who took out the sample and prepped the sample and the petrographer was, you could see some cracks in the hydrated cement matrix, so that gray stuff, as well as your aggregate caused by that ASR gel expansion.
Right.
And I mean, that right there, you can also do pH tests. You can also, do some length comparison tests, quality of rock or quality of concrete cores. I know you guys did something like that at the Army Corps of Engineers.
The Bureau did some RQE.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the Bureau of Reclamation, where you took I think the last time I was there, they had a 36-foot long core,
right, and
they restructured it to show how much damage was caused. And that is another way of doing it. That there is a bit of an issue here that I'm trying to bring up. I started out with money is not an object.
Right.
And the problem is, once ASR has happened, I mean, shoot, you could just look back and be like, yep, that's ASR damage, all right. I mean, that's the best way of doing it, besides putting it under a scope and saying, yep, that's ASR damage, all right.
Yeah.
The better idea would be to identify if your materials are going to be sensitive, your composite is going to be sensitive to ASR or AAR.
So just look back through the placement data and whatnot.
Well, even if you can get there before, if you know that if you're an engineer who's new to the area and you're inspecting all these facilities in your area that have been made with concrete that are available in your area, and you see there's a lot of ASR gel attack. So if you're a junior or senior engineer and you want to design to mitigate this issue, at that point there's a lot more that you can do to prevent this from happening. But once it happens, I mean, you're up shit's creek without a paddle. It's I mean,
once you get those cracks, there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
What dam is it? I think it's a dam that Mike Thomas talks about frequently. It's out of University or outside of New Brunswick, Canada, where the dam grows 8 inches every year, and they have to chop off this and that around the hydroelectric equipment.
Saw cut it, and
is that true?
Certainly, that anecdote's pretty common in the dams industry.
It is.
So yeah, I think that's probably true.
And I want to say
there's a lot of liars.
There's a lot of liars, and they're doing a good job. And the thing is, in the book we actually do have pictures of a few dams that grew. I mean,
right.
Those are definitely growing. There was another one that we had that was in Alabama. Here, this one.
Yeah.
This one grew either 1 inch or 2 inches, and that was strictly from the ASR gel attack. And if you look here, you see where they took a core?
Right.
right at the center of that Isle of Man
I
crack.
see that. Yeah.
Isn't that awesome?
That's a good picture.
That is a good picture, man.
Yeah.
For $14.99, this is not a bad book. What? It's not. It's a very good book for junior and senior level engineers.
I agree. It's got a lot of great pictures, a lot of things to give you some guidance.
Right.
Yeah.
It's supposed to act as a picture book / dictionary, so you can open it at any point and grab a piece of information.
Right.
Now, so, just to finish this up, I think the better approach would be try to identify mitigation measures beforehand, because once it happens, like I said, you're up shit's creek. And from there, you've got mortar bar expansion tests that are 14 and 28 day tests. You got ASR gel polymerization tests that are 72 hours.
Right.
So there are a lot of tests, autoclave tests from the Army Corps that they're doing right now with Stephanie Wood. I mean, there's just so many different tests out there to help you design a concrete that'll be more resilient to AAR, ASR attack.
Yeah, it's more common, so there's more need.
Right. So that's, I think, hopefully answered your question.
No, I appreciate that. That's all good. I'll know what to look for next time I'm there, and try to separate the stress strain from the cement chemistry.
Amen. Amen. So if you have any questions, concrete concerns, shoot us a message, a direct message, throw us a post on one of our videos or articles or photos, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, all those different platforms. Don't forget, we're the concrete experts. We make concrete do the impossible. Go concrete, beat asphalt.
Beat asphalt.